Good morning, Facebook world. I hope everybody's having a beautiful morning. Because I'm Canadian, we're going to talk about the weather. It's a beautiful fall day here. I love fall. It's my favorite time of year. So today is sunny and cool. Perfect day to get the dogs out for a run and enjoy our lovely nature. Thank you for joining me on our Facebook Live this morning. As always, please feel free to ask questions and in the comments, and I will answer throughout the live. So just ask away. If you are listening to this as a recording, I do regularly check back and answer questions. For those of you on the call, please say hello and let me know where you're from. And today I would like to ask for you to tell me if there's anything special fall activities that you do with your dog. With me, my family always goes apple picking at the big orchard nearby. And we take the dogs, they get to go on the wagon, run around the apple trees. It's a great way to spend some time. Okay, while we give people a couple of minutes to join us, I was going to go talk about something that popped up a couple of times this week. Did you know that the first 4 weeks after you bring a dog into your home is called the honeymoon period? Usually you hear this about a rescue dog or an adopted dog, but any dog who comes into your house who moves from one home to another for the first 4 weeks is called the honeymoon period. Not so much with very young puppies, but for about any dog older than about 5 months old. It's like, think of it for you as starting a new job. It takes a few weeks for you to settle in, get the lay of the land, find out the do's and don'ts of your new environment. This is a great time to create new habits while your dog is still learning the rules. You can also get this off balance dog when you move to a new house. So sometimes, let's say people have really bad door manners. It's a great time to change the behavior because that habit hasn't been created in the new house. So, like with a new puppy, I want to be proactive instead of reactive. Let me explain what this means. Being proactive means you create behavior like starting crate training the day the dog enters your house, whether puppy or adult. Start super easy by something like feed him his meals in the crate. This allows you to create value for the crate while they are still off balance and less likely to argue the point or complain and stuff like that. Um, Being reactive means you wait for the dog to react to what the dog you wait, sorry. Being reactive means waiting for the dog to offer behavior and then you react to it, which means you're always reacting to the dog. You want to be proactive. Let's say you get a rescue and you decide to leave him loose in your house when you aren't home. To me, that's insane. But remember, I do this for a living, so I get to hear all the horror stories. I find it interesting the comments about why is my dog in a crate when I'm not home on the videos and posts I've made about crate training. And I'm like, I hear all these horror stories. I can't leave my dog loose. I've tried. It's stressful for me. And my dogs are totally happy in their crate. So why not? Um, so, anyways, you've gotten an adult rescue, you've left them loose in the house. It goes fine for a couple of weeks, and then you come home and your couch is chewed. And now the dog is used to being loose, and now you have to decide to crate train because you like your furniture and you like it to stay in one piece. Now it'll be harder. The dog will argue more because he's had freedom. In my opinion, it is much easier to teach them to be crated. And then if you give them freedom and they do well, awesome. That's great. You now have a great trained dog who can be loose in the house. But if they make a mistake, you can right away go back to crate training and keep working on it. Usually destroying furniture is a young dog thing or a stressed dog thing, and most dogs outgrow it unless the habit of chewing the couch sticks in. I have met so many dogs that were fine in the house till they weren't. For example, a friend of mine's 7-year-old dog ate one of the spindles on her railing. I can't even imagine how much money that's going to cost to fix. Stuff like this is the reason I crate my dogs when I'm not home because I know I'm going to come home with my dogs happy and safe in my crate and my staff safe, which is my goal. So, And if you were crate training, set it up for success. Feed your dog their meals, take them for a good run before you put them in a crate. I'm not saying it has to be ugly and fighting. I'm saying make it as positive an experience as possible, but at the same time, build that value for the crate. Hello, Debbie from Western Massachusetts. Hopefully you're having a wonderful Friday morning. So have you experienced a honeymoon period with a dog you've adopted? Did you see the changes in behavior after a few weeks? It's like they have a calendar, 3 to 4 weeks. You start, I get people saying, oh, he didn't bark, now he's barking. Or he didn't pull on leash, now he's pulling on leash. Or he didn't jump on me, now he's jumping on me. It's amazing how these things happen to everybody. So let's get started with today's topic. So today's topic is, do you know the definition of insanity? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I see that a lot with dog training. So that's why I wanted to talk about it today. What I want to dive into today is how we as dog owners regularly put ourselves and our dogs in situations where you know he's going to act a certain way and then get mad when he acts the way you expected. It's, if you think about it like that, it's duh, why are we doing this? But yet we do it. And I do it too, not just you. For example, I have a 10-year-old border collie named Iggy. When he was a baby or a young dog, let's say less than a year, I started this behavior. Iggy loves to go over and visit with the neighbors across the street. At least this is how this behavior started. And now he just likes to run down my driveway and go across the street. And don't worry, I live on a large country property at the end of a dead-end street with only 3 houses. This isn't dangerous, it's just really annoying. And in hindsight, I cannot believe I allowed this behavior to get created. I'm happy to say I've now had 2 more border collies, and they don't do this because I was so aware of what I did with Iggy and I learned from it. That's the good news about having previous dogs. You do learn what you need to change for the next dogs. We have a really long driveway, about 400 feet, and I regularly train my dogs on the driveway, especially in the winter because it's plowed. Iggy and I would be training, and he would look at the neighbor's yard, and as soon as he looked, I would call him, and as soon as I called him, he would take off at full speed down the driveway, and I swear the more I called, the faster he ran. And when I look back, I just shake my head knowing I created this, and let me tell you how. I knew he was going to go. I knew the odds were high that he was going to go. So calling him was a waste of my time. And calling him and putting pressure on him when I ran towards him, which I would, was actually pushing him away from me. Now, the first time, let's say with Wicca, who's now 7 months old, the first time she heard the neighbors, I actually backed away from her. So I let her make the choice to come to me. Now, she might have said, I'm going to go visit the neighbors anyways. She hasn't to this point. But then she would be on a leash, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, to prevent her from making that incorrect choice again. But just the fact that I didn't call her and I didn't put pressure on her, didn't push her away from me, therefore didn't push her towards the neighbors. So the habit I created with Iggy was, if he wasn't 100% engaged with me in the front yard, he would look down the driveway and then he would take off at full speed. And at first it was going to visit the neighbors. Now he just runs over there and pees on their trees and comes back 10 minutes later. It's not like he's even going there for a purpose. It's just the habit of going over there. If I had kept him on a line, so the first time he did that, if I went, you know what, when we're in the front yard, you're going to be on a long line. So the minute you look, I can stand on the line and prevent you from making that choice. And then when you came towards me, we would keep interacting. I could have created a dog who ignored the neighbors when they were outside, or the neighbor's dog when he was outside, and stayed working with me. But because at that time, in hindsight, I have no idea. I think I fell into the, you should, this is what you should do because this is what I've trained you to do. I fell into that trap. So instead of creating the dog I wanted, which is the dog who hung out with me in the front yard, I created the dog that all of a sudden would just look down the driveway and go. So this is an example of doing the same thing over and over, continuing to call him. And to this day, every now and then he takes off and I can't help it. I call him. I just can't help it. I try and I rarely call him, but once in a while my brain explodes and I call him. So, I forget and stuff happens. So that's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about what are you allowing your dog to make choices of that you really, really hate? Dogs make wrong choices on a regular basis, especially young dogs. They make mistakes just like we do. That information you can give them with some management is what helps them not make that mistake. And the more they don't make the mistake, the more they make the right choice. The more they make the right choice, the more you're building the right habit. Limiting your dog's choices in the situation or any situation will put you back on track, continuing to build the habit you want. Can you think of somewhere where you are doing this, where your dog is creating a habit you don't want? A situation that my clients have a lot of problems with is jumping. I hear the following all the time. Every time we have company, the dog jumps on them. People come in, you try holding the dog back, but the dog is so excited. Eventually, you let him go. You know he's going to jump, but you aren't sure what to do. And actually, the holding him back and letting him get super excited and then letting him go is actually building drive for that behavior. You tell your company to just ignore him, and some do, but most don't. They either yell to get off or they pet him. You realize your dog is getting worse to the point where you don't even want to have company over. Remember the definition of insanity. If you don't change anything, your dog is not going to change. And even worse, you are building the behavior of when people come over, they lose their mind. So the dog continually gets worse and worse and worse, and you don't know what to do. It's so easy to fall into this trap. What are your dog's door manners like? Would you like something different, or are you totally happy with their door manners? I'll tell you a secret, my dog door manners are not great. It's just something that I just don't care enough to train. But they don't get yelled at. It's just they walk over, they jump on the people, and they jump on the people. 90% of my company, it doesn't encourage the jumping, pets the jumping, so it's fine. What I want though is, can I call you off the person? Because that's a recall issue, not a jumping issue. And if I have company over, like my in-laws who they can't jump on, then what I do is use a baby gate or use a crate. After 10 minutes, they calm down and then I let them in. So I use management instead of training because it just seems like a lot of work to train. Debbie, guilty. Yes. And honestly, door manners are one of those big, huge problems that almost everybody has. Like with all issues, the first step is stop it from happening. Like I said, I use management to stop it from happening when I need to stop it from happening. This could be a baby gate, a crate, or even putting your dog in the backyard when you answer the door. I have a friend with a bunch of little Jack Russells, and she puts them in, and it depends on your house, right? Her basement door is really close to her front door. So before she opens the door, let's say she's getting a pizza delivered, she calls her dogs, they all run into the basement. She throws a handful of cookies down there, so it's easy. They're not at the door. And then she can open the door, grab her pizza, and then let her dogs out. Next step, you have to build what you want. So if I'm working on not jumping, which I am working on not jumping with Wicca right now, don't start at the front door. Don't start where there's already so much excitement, so much history. Start in your driveway or in your living room. Start somewhere where the situation's a little calmer. Then I work on two things: dogs approaching calmly and sitting while being pet. If you want to see some videos of this, check out my Canine Essentials with Paula Hoger Facebook pit group. I will also post links in the show notes of some videos of me working on this with the little Miss Wicca. As always, it is easier to start this with a new dog or puppy before they have the bad habits. But you can change this habit if you follow the steps. And keep in mind, you can just manage the door and not bother with the rest of the training. Debbie, my girls wait patiently for a walk and they always let me go first. But company comes, they become ding dong doodles. I love that. Ding dong doodles. Yes, it's all good till it's not good. So I would be working, and you said girls, so you have multiple dogs. So you definitely could only work this one dog at a time and then work. You need to be able to get it one dog and then work up to multiple dogs. Um, so try something. So this is called proofing, and I think we talk about it a little later. But so they can do it with just you there. You open the door. I want you next time you go to the door and they sit calmly, I want you to open the door and say hello. And honestly, when people come over, we say hello. So usually I can get the dogs to fail on just a hello without a person. So have them on leash, say hello. They're going to make a mistake and get up and get excited. So then you have the leash on, you wait till they sit back down, good girl. And then you do it again. You open the door, hello. When they sit calmly, now you can reward that. Then you can have a friend come over and just stand outside the door. You just build it slowly. Can your girls walk up to somebody and stay on all four paws when they greet, or do they come up and jump all the time? That's a question for you. Okay, I think sometimes we get stuck in ruts with our dogs. And as always, dog training mimics life. So in our life too, change is hard. Even when we don't like the way things are, for some reason, not changing anything seems easier than changing. Our brains like familiar, and habits, whether good or bad, are familiar. Um, Change takes thought and effort. Habits, you are changing a habit as much for you as for your dog. Your brain likes habits because they are easy and don't require thinking. That's what a habit is. It just happens. Habits are just behaviors, that patterns that at first were rewarded, and like when everybody wants to come over and meet your new puppy, you've created the bad door manners. So most puppies, what happens? Somebody walks through the door, puppy, right? So right from the beginning, we're building lose your mind at the door. And this just gets worse and worse and worse. Now we're holding them back, and all of a sudden you have a 100-pound dog jumping on your company. But then even when you don't want them anymore, they still won't go away. Um, Helen, hello is also a trigger. Yeah, it's such a trigger. It's amazing. The words hello make most dogs bark or lose their mind or get excited. So many things are triggers, and I have to do a Facebook Live on triggers. Triggers are, once you start paying attention to triggers, you can make such a big difference in your dog training. For example, nail clippers. Nail clippers are triggers for most dogs to run away. What if right from the day you got the dog, you showed them the nail clippers and then fed them their dinner? Now nail clippers are triggers of happy, fun things happening. Hello is such a trigger. My dogs go crazy when I join a conference call and all of a sudden say hello. They run to the window to see who's there. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, no, my dogs don't react to when I'm on the computer, but um, I could see that happening. Yeah. So you could train them to, when I say hello, jump on your bed and I'm going to throw you cookies. So sit at your desk, have beds out, um, hello, and then throw cookies on their bed. Start with one at a time. But eventually your dog should, when you say hello on your computer, jump to on their bed and wait for cookies. And again, who cares if they run to the door unless they're now all barking and disturbing your conference call. So you always have to, 2 weeks from now, my Facebook Live is going to be on picking your battles. You can, but you can't train every single thing out of your dogs, because that would take a ridiculous amount of time. You'd have to quit your job and just train your dog. So it's figuring out what battles are really hugely important and what battles you're like, meh, go ahead, do that. So I challenge you to look at your everyday life with your dog. Pick one little thing you would like to change and come up with a plan. Need some help? Contact me. Sometimes small changes can make huge differences. Share with us what you are going to work on and what you want to change. Another example I want to talk about is walking on leash. Here's a habit we start right as little bitty babies. and then fight for the dogs, fight with the dogs for their whole lives. Dogs pull because we let them. Um, I always tell people we can move a horse because the horse thinks we can. Dogs pull us down the street because the dogs knows he can. If you've ever been to a dog show, you see these tiny little ladies walking around with these humongous like mastiffs and bull mastiffs, so 150 pound dog on this little tiny leash, and the dog walks perfectly because he doesn't know he has a choice. We start right from the beginning letting our puppies pull. So when people put their puppies on leash, they follow them around. It's like a divining rod. They're just moving around. And this is teaching the dog and creating the habit of you lead, I follow. This is not a dominant alpha thing. This is a training thing. When walking down the street, I don't want my dog to pull, period. This is different when my dog is in harness and I'm working on something that requires pulling, like sledding or weight pulling or tracking. So I just want to be clear, this is not, you can't pull because I'm dominant. No, you can't pull because it's annoying. So here's the thing that I find fascinating. We keep putting on the dogs on different collars and different harnesses that create discomfort when the dog pulls. All the anti-pulling devices work on it is uncomfortable to pull, therefore you won't pull. But we aren't changing behavior. So the discomfort reduces the pulling at first, but eventually with most dogs, the pulling comes back as hard or almost as hard. Here's why. We create the pulling habit. We build the pulling habit by letting the dog practice it every day and get reinforced for pulling by getting where he wants to go. For example, your dog pulls to a bush and you let him get there and smell the bush and pee on it. Well, now you've just reinforced pulling to the bush. So we build the pulling habit every day. And I hear what you're saying, but I have no choice. I try not to let them pull, but even if once a walk you let your dog pull, you are still reinforcing the pulling. Since the goal is usually when people take their dogs for a walk, the goal is usually to get somewhere, you eventually get tired of arguing and just let them pull. Now the anti-pulling devices are like challenges for your dog, and dogs love challenges. Here, let me make it harder for you and see if you can still get where you're going. And so now the dog's walking on, let's say, a head halter, like a halty, and your dog pulls toward the bush and you stop him. And at first it's easy, but then he pulls harder and harder. And you're like, well, you got to pee, go ahead and pull to the bush. And now you're reinforcing just pull. I have seen many dogs on a head halter walking down the street with their heads sideways because they're pulling. That is super hard on their neck and bad on their spine and will create all sorts of neck problems. So until you change the walking behavior, you are never going to fix the pulling habit, even with corrective devices, most likely. Some dogs you can get away with it. Some dogs the discomfort is high enough and the drive is low enough, but with most dogs it won't work. Does that make sense? Have you and your dog fallen into this sequence of behavior that you can't get out of? What is the solution? Change the sequence of behaviors, change the whole picture. I love the head halter, and I find it very helpful in teaching my dogs to understand not to lose their brain. But before it goes on, my dog already understands how not to pull. My goal from the first time I put my dog on leash is not to walk around the block, but to walk well. And if that means we walk 3 feet one way, 3 feet the other, I am perfectly fine with that. The goal is to walk well, not to walk far, which I find most people, the goal is to walk far, not to walk well. It starts with my ODR game, which I've mentioned a couple of times, observe, don't react. And again, you can see videos of this on the Canine Essentials Facebook group. If my dog can be calm while standing still, then we can attempt to walk. But if my dog standing still is pulling or lunging or barking or nervous, then there is no point moving because you guarantee he's going to walk. So yes, that means you have to be creative about exercise. And I know in some situations this becomes a challenge, but the work you put in now will give you that dog that walks well for the rest of your life. I would love to hear about your challenges that you are facing with your dog. I know it is easy to fall into these behavior traps. Pay attention this week to what your dog does that makes you unhappy. Join us next week and share what you discovered and what changes you have made, and tell me how it worked out. Did it work? Did it not work? Do you need new changes? Next week's Facebook Live is on Friday, September 25th at 10 a.m. Um, next, we're next week we're going to talk about when cookies become a poison cue. So what that means is I've had dogs in that were at my house for a variety of reasons. Anyways, when they wouldn't come in from the backyard, I went and grabbed cookies, and as soon as they saw the cookies, they actually backed away. So we're going to talk about that next week. Have a wonderful week. I'll hang out for 10-15 minutes to see if there's any questions. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Bye.